What's going on, Bills Mafia? I'm Fernando Schmude, that's your leading the charge. Today I'm going to talk about the new Bills lineup after the first couple of weeks of free agency. Brandon Beane has retooled this roster, right, with some moves in the free agency, and I'm going to evaluate this new Bills lineup, at least this new Bills early lineup. Obviously, we know some moves can still be made. We know the draft is just ahead in time, and the rookies will be important for this team in 2024, 2025. But still, we already can see the big picture. We already can see what Brandon Beane has in mind for this roster, what Sean McDermott has in mind for his lineup. Obviously, at this point of the season or the off season, we don't have an official lineup. We don't know all the players that will be there, but we have a big picture. We have an idea about how the Buffalo Bills are going to line up in 2024. So with the information we have and the moves that have been made so far, I'm going to evaluate this lineup and also compare it to the last season's one, because national media mainly, when they talk about the Bills, they all kind of agree that the Bills got worse this offseason. The Bills lost their defensive backfield. The Bills don't have a good defense anymore, in their words. And I've seen people saying, oh, Josh Allen for the first time will need to play without a top defense helping him. So all this kind of nonsense, right, that we know that people that haven't watched the Bills a lot and only have watched some highlights and some games here and there, they share this kind of opinion. So without further ado, I'm going to start the evaluation. Feel free to interact via the comment section. The Leading the Charge is always live every Friday at 1 p.m. East and every Sunday normally at 8 East, right? So let's get going. Feel free to comment via comment sections, hit that like button, subscribe to Buffalo Rumblings channel, help us to and support us to continue to create content for Bills Mafia, the Leading the Charge on Sundays in Portuguese for Latin America, for Brazil, and every Portuguese-speaking country, right? And every Friday in English to all the Bills Mafia all over the world. So let's get it going, Bills Mafia. And I will use the depth chart from our lads, a courtesy from our lads. They always update it all the time. It's a nice source, in my opinion, to follow the depth charts all over the league during the entire season. And it's no different during the off season as well, where they already have all our additions there, and they have a preview, right, of what the Bills, how can the Bills line up next season. So I'm going to share this screen with the Our Lads page, and I'm going to comment on this Bills lineup through this page and go through every positional group, every player on this roster, and especially the starters and main backups so far, having in mind that we still will add rookies to contribute, having in mind that we can be surprised by some cuts before the season. We can be surprised by some new additions, right? We know that Tre'Davious White cap savings, for example, they just kick in after June, right? So the Bills will have some money to make a signing similar to Leonard Floyd signing last season, a guy that came to the Bills and became a starter and a big-time contributor. So the Bills can still add this kind of player just before the season, after the draft, after being able to look at all the roster, look at the depth chart, and identify still a need for an impact player. The Bills should be able to do this kind of move again this season with this cap savings from Davis White contract when they kick in. But right now, what we have are the moves made by being in this free agency in these first 2 weeks. And I'm going to start from the offensive side of the ball, right? And we have our wide receiver group, a big time. I wouldn't say a question mark because I feel better about this group of wide receivers today than I felt a year ago when we still had Gabe Davis, when we had Stephon Diggs, without any questions about Stephon Diggs last season, about him being a number one wide receiver. I know some people in Bills Mafia that are a little bit worried about Stephon Diggs. I personally believe he's still Stephon Diggs that we know, a number one wide receiver, a guy that can beat his man, even during this bad stretch with Brady as offensive coordinator. We saw moments where we could see the same good and number one caliber wide receiver Stephon Diggs, despite some not yielding some results. Like, for example, we could see Diggs beating Jalen Ramsey deep easily. Unfortunately, Josh missed that throw, and we could see Diggs beating the Patriots cornerback as well deep for another throw that would put him over 100 yards on those games. And unfortunately, Josh missed him on both times, overthrew him. And then obviously in the last game in the playoffs against the Chiefs, the drop that was his mistakes. He owned it already. He's on record owning it, right? And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it happens to everybody. It happens to the best receivers, and it happened to Stephon Diggs. I felt like he dropped more passes than usual after Brady became the coordinator. And yeah, the end of the last season wasn't ideal, wasn't what we expected, what we needed. But I still think it's early to write Stephon Diggs off as a number one wide receiver. He's again working out. He's again getting prepared for next season, and I feel like he's gonna get back to on Bill's drive with another chip on his shoulder because people are doubting him. And I hope so. I hope that he can come back and be the best version of himself and help the Bills still as as wide receiver number one. Even if he is a step slower, and if he is a little bit worse than he used to be, even if it's true and it's possible, after all, he's not getting any younger, I still feel more confident about this group of wide receiver. And we are talking pre-draft because wide receiver obviously is a position that we can add via draft, and it's totally possible, and it makes all sense in the world to draft a wide receiver early, probably in the first round, still after those moves in the free agency. But even if the Bills don't draft a wide receiver early, I'm still more confident in this group of wide receivers right now than I was at this group of wide receivers a year ago when we had Gabe Davis as wide receiver two, a guy that I couldn't trust as our wide receiver two. I get it. I get him doing the dirty job, him being a good blocker. I get it that he was a great teammate. I get it that he worked really hard and was a leader, a respected guy in the locker room. I get it all. He had some production in the past. He had his moments. But unfortunately, the latest that we've seen from Gabe Davis is him failing Josh Allen, dropping passes, being part of a lot of interceptions. Most of Josh Allen interceptions were thrown in the direction of Gabe Davis. Oh, it's not always his fault, Fernando. I know it's not always his fault, but man, if you are having miscommunication with Josh Allen as your quarterback, you better get your stuff figured out because Josh Allen won't be the guy walking out the door, you know? So you got to figure it out. And Gabe Davis couldn't. Unfortunately, for example, we lost a game to the Eagles that we could have won. if Josh and Gabe were in the same page, right? And it's just an example. We saw against other teams, Gabe Davis running a route, Josh throwing another route. So, and we in what even is more what is more impressive, or what calls more my attention about it, is that we didn't see a lot of that with other guys. I can't remember Josh throwing passes on different routes and wide receiver running different routes than Josh was throwing with other guys, with Diggs, with Shakir, even Kincaid, who's a rookie. So I can't remember, and we saw plenty of that with Gabe Davis. So he wasn't the wide receiver 2 we needed, and maybe Curtis Samuel isn't as well. Okay, but first of all, it's better to try for a change, to try a different guy, and we're trying a different guy that being scouted heavily since his Carolina days. We're trying a different guy that Joe Brady already worked with and could make him produce. We are trying a different guy that if he fails to be the wide receiver number 2, maybe he wouldn't even be asked to be this guy, because if we draft a guy at number 28, this guy probably will step in as our wide receiver 2, rotating with Samuel, rotating with Khalil, rotating even with Diggs, and I want to believe the Bills would bring him to the squad without the pressure to produce right away as wide receiver 1, but with the intention of this guy becoming the wide receiver number 1 down the road. That's the idea. That's the magic of drafting a wide receiver in round 1 this year in a special class. You have a deep wide receiver class. You have several quarterbacks probably getting drafted before the Bills pick, what elevates, for example, if it's a draft like Kenny Pickett's draft, where he was the only quarterback picked in the round 1, and the Bills draft 28, okay, you only consider that the Bills drafted 27 because only Pickett was drafted. But in this draft, if you have 3, even 4 quarterbacks, some people have 5, but let's shoot for 4 here, right? 3 in the top 10, and then 1 more. The Bills are already picking at 24th, the 24th best player outside of the quarterback position, right? Instead of at 28. So it's already a jump in the draft. You are already trading up without doing anything, right? So it's interesting in this draft. And then you have a deep wide receiver class. We saw some wide receiver classes that didn't have a guy in round 1. We saw some that have 1 or 2 guys in as round 1 talents. And this draft, we have 3 guys that potentially can go in the top 10. And then we have 1 more that helped him a lot in Brian Thomas, helped himself a lot in the combine. And at this point, he is expected to go in the first 20 picks. So you have 4 quarterbacks, you have maybe 4 more wide receivers going before the Bills pick, and then you still have some talented wide receivers available, guys that would be the best wide receiver in other classes, and they are the 4th, the 5th option. You know, we remember John Ross jumping up on draft boards when he ran the fastest 40-yard dash, and this year Xavier Worthy did it again, right? Just broke the record, and maybe he isn't going in the round 1. So it's crazy to think about the talent in this wide receiver draft class, and that's why I believe it's ideal for the Bills to draft a wide receiver in this round 1, because an ultra talented guy will be available at 28, and the Bills gotta identify the best one, the guy that has the most potential to become a number 1 wide receiver down the road, and invest in this guy. That's what I think. Brandon Beane has been setting the floor on every position. He definitely doesn't need to pick a wide receiver in round 1. He has a group decent enough to play well for Josh Allen this year without this number 1 draft pick. But he also is setting the floor on the other areas like defensive tackle. We have or pair of starters back with Daquan Jones back and Ed Oliver, obviously. At safety, we saw a pair of guys that played a lot last season in Taylor Rapp and Ken Lewis getting brought back, and then Mike Edwards being added to the fold and probably as a favorite to be a starter opposite to Rapp. I wouldn't write off Ken Lewis, but still, they are the favorites. And the Bills aren't forced to draft a safety in round one, right? And even with the moves on the offensive line, that I believe is a sneaky need now, because you don't have a lot of depth, or at least proven depth, because Vandermark, Anderson, those are guys that the Bills probably like a lot. Cromer probably loved those guys. Vandermark has all the tools, the athletic ability, similar to Spencer Brown. So this guy can be a development piece for Cromer, and he probably loves the what the guys offer athletically. So the Bills might be perfectly fine with the depth, but we've never seen those guys playing a lot in real game situations. So we tend to believe that the Bills have a need still in the offensive line depth without Morse and without Bates. And maybe that's a great class of offensive tackle talent. We saw a lot of guards getting paid in this free agency. So the Bills might be inclined to draft offensive tackle, offensive line early, remembering that Spencer Brown is a free agent next year. And if he can put together a second consecutive decent season as a right tackle starter for the Bills, he might get the bag next offseason. So you gotta be prepared to maybe life after Spencer Brown. And I'm not the biggest Spencer Brown fan. I don't think he played that well last season. I saw a lot of help his way through ships from running backs, ships from tight ends, but you can't deny that he has all the tools, athletically speaking. A mobile guy, big guy, long arms, very strong, nasty in the run game. So not sure if the Bills will be able to keep him for next season, and maybe the Bills be inclined to draft offensive line with all those decisions down the line. So with that said, Bills Mafia, back to the wide receiver group. Diggs, even if Diggs isn't your number one, your sure thing at number one anymore, top 5 wide receiver in the league, even if you don't believe he is this guy anymore, compared to last season, Dalton Kincaid is entered the season as a starter day one now, right? He's not behind Dawson Knox. He's not that question mark anymore. He has experience. It's expected that he can even get better in the second season and become more of a factor. He was last season already, or he ended last season as our number 2 pass catcher. He's not the wide receiver, but he's the number 2 pass catcher for Josh Allen, number 2 weapon. And it's expected that he can establish himself even more in that role and get better in that role. So with Kincaid getting better, and especially with Shakir, a guy that ended last postseason, especially playing incredibly well, being on the same page with Josh Allen, awesome catch in the end zone against the Chiefs in one of the most underrated Josh Allen passes all time, in my opinion. Escaping the pocket to the left, throwing against his body on the move, on the corner of the end zone, a dart to Shakir. So Shakir has become this great slot weapon for Josh, and I think he will continue to trend up. He does all the right things. He's working with Eric Moulds for another off season, and I can't think of a better mentor than Eric Moulds. So I really trust Shakir to continue to get better. So with Kincaid and Shakir jump in production, with the addition of Curtis Samuel, a guy that isn't Gabe Davis, and he's a different kind of weapon, a guy that has speed to threat the defenses, a guy that can run those crossers against men that we saw Josh Allen throw into McKenzie, and McKenzie didn't have to do a lot. He just needed to beat his defender um, on his foot speed. So Curtis Samuel can do that, but he's bigger than McKenzie. He's better than McKenzie. He can fool those guys and come back and run corner routes out of those fake crossers. So he can do so much stuff to help Josh as well that only these things that I'm describing right now are enough, in my opinion, to be an improvement over Gabe Davis that was unreliable. So with those guys offering more than the guys that we had last season, even if Diggs gets a step down, even if Diggs is a step slower, even if he's not at his best anymore, the other guys should be enough to balance things out, and this group of wide receivers should be better than last season's one. You have Mac Hollins added. I'm not counting him a lot in the pass catching department. He's more, in my opinion, a replacement for Cyron Neal and for a guy like Jake Kummerow, when you need to come in for a few snaps to block in the run game, to be a big target, but I don't see him having a major impact in the offense. Justin Shore, there is a question mark. He will have an opportunity to showcase his talents and try to fight for a roster spot. Otherwise, he should be back in the practice squad. And then you have the couple of speedsters battling out in Andy Isabella and KJ Hamler, trying to become the next Isaiah McKenzie, Deontay Hardy in that role, contributing, returning, and as a Swiss knife type wide receiver, a guy for gadget plays. I like this group, and I feel like adding a wide receiver 2 in the draft should make this group even better, right? And this wide receiver 2 will be able, by playoffs time, to be established as a starter. But from day one, remember, Rashee Rice last season for the Chiefs, in their first game of the season, he just caught one pass for a touchdown. It was his only catch, and he was rotating in and out, and he wasn't a starter. And he wasn't a big contributor in the first few weeks of the season. But by the time the Chiefs eliminated the Bills, you had Travis Kelce as Mahomes' best pass catcher. And right after him, it's Rashee Rice making plays. So if you draft a wide receiver in round 1, this guy might not need to be an important piece day 1, but he should be able to be a contributor by playoff time and a big time one. And that's why I can't help myself and not advocate for Adonai Mitchell. I really believe Adonai Mitchell is this guy. In my opinion, he fits perfectly because he has nice size. He has the smoothness, all right? He has the route running potential. He has the hands. He has the tracking ability. He has the speed. So that's a guy, in my opinion, that has it all. He has the experience in big games in college. He has the experience in big games when he wasn't the number 1 still at Georgia. But he came there and contributed with touchdown catches in championship games and in playoff games. So he's just 21 years old. If you draft, for example, Xavier Legette, that I really like, and Randy Hardman, or brother or friend or partner here that always is here in leading the chart, has Legette as his guy, and I really like Legette, and I would love Legette as well. But Legette is 24, right? So Adonai Mitchell is 21. He can develop, get better really young, and I really don't see Adonai Mitchell not becoming a wide receiver 1 in this league. I really believe he will be a guy like that, and learning from Diggs, learning from the guys ahead of him, and being a part of this pass catching group and contributing as a rookie, it would be ideal. So I hope and I really hope the Bills go that direction. I would be really happy if AD Mitchell was our pick. Let's keep going, because half of this leading the chart has been recorded on the books already, and I just talked about wide receivers. So let's keep going. But please, Bills Mafia, hit that like button, subscribe to Buffalo Rumblings channel, and help help the lead in the charge to get to more people so Bills Mafia can come, listen, participate via chat. Some guys from Brazil participating here. Renan with there we go Bills. Itamar with hi Fernando, go Bills. So feel free to let me know if you think the pass catching group is better this year now with Samuel, or you prefer the last season's one. Which one do you trust better? Let me know, please. So moving forward, I again, we still haven't added a rookie yet. I definitely believe we will add one, even if it's not round one. And I believe this pass catching group, wide receivers, tight ends, is better than last season's one. So the Bills got better there and not worse, unlike a lot of people in national media want to believe. So let's move forward. Offensive line, right? And here, yeah, we have a question mark in the offensive line because, yeah, Mitch Morse was a very experienced guy, a very good center, all right? Probably not in his prime anymore, probably not the strongest anchor guy in the middle, right? But yeah, he's a guy that I feel like the Bills can miss him because he was the leader of that offensive line. And finally, when the Bills finally could get some continuity and some steadiness in this offensive line, the Bills gotta make some moves and trade Bates and cut Morse, and we will see some changes. At least we have guys coming back from last season, guys that were part of all that steadiness, all that balance, all that good momentum from this offensive line. They are back, and you have those starters back, right? Dion Dawkins played his best football of his career last season. He's back. David Edwards, he played a totally different role. That's a question mark because he was the extra offensive line coming in, helping run blocking, and well, he wasn't playing left guard, starting left guard snaps, but he certainly played well in his role, right? So he earned that place and that trust from Aaron Cromer in his days as a Ram, where he won a Super Bowl playing as a starter, and last year getting back in shape, getting back in working his way back from injuries and concussions and being able to establish himself again as a very good piece. And now he's back as a starter at left guard. Then Connor McGovern moved to center, a guy that myself included, I was a little bit concerned. I believe a lot of people are a little bit concerned about McGovern moving to center. Tim Graham at man, I just can't remember now if it's Tim Graham or Buscaglia, but both of them do a great job at the Athletic, and they had an article talking to McGovern and some of his coaches in how McGovern played center growing up, and how he had seen some snaps practicing as a center last season already as a third center for the Bills, and he was eager for this opportunity to become a center again. He loves to play the position. He want to be the tip of the spear, as he says. And so that's the opportunity. He's a guy that will need to communicate, that will need to step up in Mitch Morse's role as a leader, as a communicator, as a guy identifying some blitzes and adjusting some protections for Josh Allen. So it is a question mark, but I feel like McGovern is a smart guy and a guy that can surprise a lot of people playing center here. And he had a very nice first season as a Bill, and I think he can play well at center as well. And then you have the right side of the Bills line, that is the young side of that line, with Osiris Torrance entering his second season as a Bill. First year working under Cromer during the entire offseason with the weight program and an NFL weight program, weight room, right? So it should help him a lot. And he was awesome as a rookie. In my opinion, he was our rookie of the year here. And And I can't wait to see Torrance in year two. I feel like there is potential to be a totally dominant right guard here for the Bills. And Spencer Brown, as I said, that's a guy playing for a lot of money after this year. So contract year, Spencer Brown, he probably will have a lot of motivation to have one more good year, to have a great off season of work, to be really prepared to play well next season. And I think it's difficult right now to not say that this offensive line might have gotten a little bit worse because losing the experience of Mitch Morse. But last season, at this point, we had a lot of question marks about Spencer Brown, about Connor McGovern in his first opportunity. So I'm way more confident in this offensive line right now, the way it is, than I was in the previous offensive line with Mitch Morse last off season, actually, when we had question marks about McGovern, about Spencer Brown. We had to draft Torrance, right? Bates was a solid starter, but Torrance is an upgrade. And even Vandermark and Anderson can be guys that Cromer might love. And I feel like offensive line might be a sneaky need. The Bills might draft somebody there early, even thinking maybe life after Spencer Brown. But this offensive line, the way it is a good group. And I don't feel like it got worse to the point of becoming a problem. I think last season this offensive line played at the best level I've seen a Bills offensive line playing in a long time, and I don't feel this group will play way worse than that group than last year. I feel like they can keep it going. There are a little bit of question marks, but I feel like they can keep it going, and that makes me some confidence on that. So closing on the offense, we have the offensive backfield with Josh Allen, the quarterback, and the running backs, obviously, right? And Josh Allen, one more year of maturation, one more year of experience, one more year of some question marks and a lot of questions about his abilities of avoiding turnovers, and then a change during the season, dealing with a change at the offensive coordinator mid-season, and then the playoffs where he could play extremely well and could avoid interceptions, not throwing even one, and throwing only touchdowns. And we'll see how Josh come back this year, and if he can keep it up, if he can continue to produce touchdowns and diminish the number of turnovers. I know there is a buzz of a lot of people talking, oh, Josh is not working enough during the offseason. And then Mahomes posted a picture already working at the gym with Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. And some people are out there on Twitter like, oh, Josh is traveling with his superstar girlfriend and isn't working out. And come on, guys. The guy, first of all, you don't need to post pictures to prove that you are working out. You can simply work out and don't show everybody. Okay? And I really prefer people that act like this and not the guys that like to showboat and to tell that they are working a lot. Just work, man. You don't need to showboat people. Josh also needs time to heal, all right? Because the way Josh Allen plays quarterback, we don't see many guys playing. So he gotta heal his body. He takes a lot of hits. He puts his body on the harm's way a lot of times. So he gotta heal. And I'm perfectly fine with him enjoying his time, taking his time, and then yes, coming back, working out, and especially if he could work a little bit with Palmer again to work on his mechanics, it would be nice because we remember last time he worked with Palmer, it was really beneficial for his game. So, but obviously he has his camp, he has way more knowledge than us about who he should work with or not. And I trust Josh to come back and be a even better version of himself next season and an MVP candidate yet again. And James Cook, last season we had a lot of question marks about him at this point of the offseason. Can he be a number one guy? Can he be a every down running back? Right now, we know he can be a Pro Bowl caliber running back. He can be a dynamic weapon, can run that ball for the Bills. And I would just love to see him working on the juggling machine because we saw some drops, some costing drops from James Cook last season, right? Some drops in the end zone, drops that cost the Bills some touchdowns. And he's so fast, he's quick, he's a dynamic weapon. If he can avoid dropping passes like he did sometimes last season, it will be really beneficial for this offense. Ty Johnson earned every bit of that running back two spot, and I'm totally fine with him being running back two. He's a guy that can take care of the ball. He has speed. He can make one cut and go. He follow his blockers. He can run between the tackles. So it was a great find, and I'm happy that Ty is back. And then you have Darrington Evans. He will compete. Probably the Bills should spend a draft pick, a late or middle round draft pick on a running back, and it would be ideal to bring a more powerful guy maybe to complement those guys. It would be nice if the Bills could go that route. And then Reggie Gideon, great special teams player, back. So overall, looking at this offense, I feel like this offense got better this offseason. And we haven't even checked what the Bills are going to do during the draft. So I feel it's totally fair to say this offense got better. And I feel it even difficult to say this offense got worse, right? I can understand national media see Gabe Davis getting a huge money and say, oh, a huge deal, and say, oh, the Bills lost the number two and the Bills lost the starting center. But looking at the moves, look at the guys that were brought in, I really believe it can be at the same level or even better, just like I said. And then let's move to the defense side of the ball, because that's where there was the biggest turnover in the roster. So starting defensive line, right? Our defensive line with Greg Rousseau back, AJ Peneza back, and the Orlad's depth chart has him as a starter. I don't believe he will be the starter over Von Miller. I honestly still believe Von Miller can play good football. He might not be the prime Von Miller anymore. He might not be the Hall of Famer Von Miller anymore, the dominant force all game long. But, man, for a player, first of all, he has a lot of character football-wise, because last season he could have simply said, no, I'm not ready to get back on the field. I'm not ready. I need more time. I need to prepare myself. But no, he wanted to be out there. And even though he couldn't contribute a lot, he wanted to be out there all season long. And unfortunately, he couldn't contribute a lot, but he could take that rust out, right? Because he was very rusty coming back from the surgery. And it was experience for Von to be able to move on the field again, to start to gain confidence again. And now with an entire offseason to work on his game, with his injury in the rear mirror, he doesn't care about his injury anymore. Now all he cares is working on his football moves, working on his football strength, working on his football shape, and not working on strengthening the knee and the legs and to avoid another injury. I feel like he has an entire offseason to work hard and be back ready to contribute. Von Miller didn't forget how to play defensive end, how to rush the passer. If he can put his body in a nice place and have a good offseason of work, I feel like he can maybe not give a prime Von Miller season, obviously, but I feel like he can produce near what Floyd produced last season. I still believe he can do that, right? Especially in a rotation like the Bills do. Epineza is valuable in the rotation as well, especially with that money that Bean was able to get him back. And then Casey Toohill from Washington is a guy that had his best season last year with 5 sacks and will be part of the rotation and will compete with guys like Kingsley Jonathan. So the Bills have some guys trying to step up, and Greg Rousseau, the biggest question mark is staying healthy. But losing Floyd here hurts, right? Losing Floyd here hurts a lot compared to last season at the defensive end. I don't think Epineza can make the jump and be an every down back. I feel like he's a backup guy, a guy that can come in the rotation, be a specialist rushing the passer. Haven't seen him play well against the run. Maybe he has an extra gear. Maybe he has an extra step to develop and become starter potential. But right now, not so sure. Not so sure about him. I still think Vaughn can do that. Rousseau can do that. And remember, we will have that cap space from cutting to Davis White after the draft, after June, right? Before the season starts. And the Bills can check that veteran pass rusher market again, just like they did with Floyd last season, and bring a guy that can contribute in the rotation. So right now it seems worse than last season without Floyd. But the potential is there, and especially last season it was difficult to expect Von Miller to play at high level. Now I don't think it's so unrealistic to think he can play at a good level like at Rousseau, at Epeneza's, at Floyd level. I think Miller is capable of getting back there. And then at the defensive tackle spots, this is a place where the Bills are still trying to make some moves, right? To add depth there. They tried Joseph Day, it didn't work out. Now they're trying Johnson. And the draft, the Bills should invest in defensive tackle in the draft. First round pick is a real possibility. Second round pick. So the Bills will draft a defensive tackle, I believe. And first of all, it's great to have Daquan Jones back alongside Ed Oliver. They work so well together. Daquan was having a great season when he got injured last year. And yet again, just like I said about Von Miller's character, football character, same thing about Daquan Jones, because you hardly ever see guys coming back in the same season when they have a torn pectoral. And Daquan Jones did that, and it's impressive. He couldn't be the same as he was in the beginning of the year, but he was there trying to help his teammates. And now he will have all the offseason to strengthen that pectoral muscle and come back and try to put together another huge season like he was having in the beginning of last season. It would be awesome. We know they rotate a lot, so getting a rookie there to rotate with them and to be that young guy with a lot of explosion and capable of making plays will be huge for this group. Drafting well will be a key to have an improvement in this group for next season, because we didn't really have a lot after Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones last season. Tim Settle was pretty average, and Linval Joseph did a valuable job trying to replace Daquan Jones, but very clear that he has a clear role at this point of his career as a strong guy in the middle trying to occupy blockers. And Jordan Phillips, unfortunately, was always injured. Love the guy, love the big guy, but unfortunately, he's past his prime and not sure if he still has some gas in the tank. So having a nice draft here, maybe snatching in some value in the free agency still, would build a nice rotation here, a rotation better than last season's one, especially after Daquan Jones got injured. And again, so the Bills start the defensive line, considering defensive tackle and defensive end, at minimum, keeping the same level as last season and not getting worse, as a lot of national media people are trying to make us believe. Linebacker groups, Bills Mafia. Linebacker groups, man, we were prived of watching a lot of Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. unfortunately, because they were awesome together. And unfortunately, it was for a short period. But it might have worked just fine for the Bills because after Milan went down, Bernard, who was already dealing with a lot of responsibility of becoming the team's middle linebacker and making the calls and leading the defense, he got even more responsibility after Milano got injured because then he was the go-to guy, right? The go-to guy to lead the defense and to cover the middle of the field without the help of the all-pro help from Matt Milano, right? So he had to play alongside Terrell Dodson, a guy that was struggling in the off season in his spot actually, and a guy that moved to Milano's place, but wasn't a good cover linebacker, and we could see the Bills playing dime in real passing situations because Dodson was a liability in coverage, like was an ideal piece in coverage, right? And Dorian Williams obviously wasn't ready, so Bernard became the go-to guy at the linebacker spot, leading that group, and it kind of speed up his development, right? His development was awesome, and now with Milano getting back, man, the possibilities and the potential is crazy high. So I really believe uh, having Bernard dealing with all that difficulties and that not having Milan alongside him last season make him grow. And now, if we can have a healthy Milan alongside Terrell Bernard, that's we're talking one of the best duels in the league here at the linebacker position. So can't wait to see them back. Hopefully, Milano can recover really well and really fast and be ready for the start of the season, because this linebacker corps, this will be the strength of this defense. They will lead this defense on both levels, against the run, against the pass, covering, rushing. They are interchangeable pieces, and they can really be special together. And then the addition of Nick Morrow, a guy that I really like being added to this linebackers corps, because this is a smart guy, a guy with experience calling the shots and being a play caller of the defense. And the Bills needed this guy. We saw what happened when Bernard went down last playoffs, and we had to play Klein at his spot, right? So we saw that it was really tough, and you need to have a guy that a plan B for Bernard that isn't such a downgrade like Klein was athletically wise. So Morrow, I think he can replace both of them. Obviously, not at the same level of Bernard and Milano, but he can offer some of the same skills, and he can also offer some insurance policy in case Dorian isn't ready. We expect Dorian to make the jump this season and to be ready to contribute whatever is needed. But if he can develop, you have Morrow as a plan B and a solid one. And then Balon Spector is still on the roster as well. Few snaps, but he played decently when he got the opportunity. So this linebacking corps should be the strength of this defense, and better than last season, especially since Milano lost almost every year. And finally, the defensive backfield, the place where all national media and all the casuals are acting like all the Bills lost all the defensive backfield and they are done and they are in trouble. And Tre'Davious White wasn't playing the most important games for the Bills in the last 2-3 years, right? He wasn't on the field. You can't miss a guy that isn't on the field. So I love Tre'Davious White. I loved him as a Bill, but the truth is he's not playing. He hasn't been playing for the Bills recently. In the biggest games, in the biggest stretches, during the second part of the seasons, during the playoffs, we didn't have Tre'Davious White available, so the Bills can't miss him. And let's be honest. Rasul Douglas, when he came in last season, he made the plays that we needed from Tre'Davious White. He made all the big time plays. I don't see Rasul Douglas as a consistent guy uh, containing people, because Tre'Davious White wasn't a shutdown cornerback as well, right? We're not talking here prime Darrell Reeves. We're not talking here prime Stephon Gilmore. Tre'Davious White was another kind of cornerback. He could do a great job sometimes shutting down one or other receiver, but his game never was that man-to-man, head-to-head defense. He was always a big time player in the schemes, playing zone, understanding the concepts, playing smart, tackling well, right? And we every nowadays nobody remember, right? Because after the guy goes away, he has no flaws anymore. But Tre'Davious White used to have some trouble with big wide receivers. We saw him suffering against AJ Green, against Kenny Golladay in the Lions back in the day. So he wasn't that. He was a great cornerback. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't prime Darrell Reeves. He wasn't prime Stephon Gilmore. So Rasul Douglas isn't this guy as well, but Rasul Douglas is a playmaker. Maybe he will allow the guy to catch one pass, to catch the second pass, to get open and catch the third one, but then in the fourth he intercepts the guy. So he's a big time playmaker. He can read quarterbacks. He can understand defense, offenses, and make plays, anticipate throws, and make game changing plays. So he has a lot of value. And then opposite Rasul Douglas, you have Christian Benford, a guy that nobody knows. Todd McShay just mocked for the Bills a cornerback in round one, what makes no sense. Christian Benford is a guy that if he were Kyrie Elam, everybody would be talking great things about, oh, the Bills picked a great guy in the round one because this is a big guy that can tackle, can cover, and started to make plays last season with interceptions, right? But since he's a sixth round pick out of Villanova, nobody knows him. And it's normal. Like when people started to recognize Milano as an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber linebacker, it's been a couple of years already that Bills Mafia knew he was pretty good. He was great, right? And with Benford, I see the same trend, right? Because he's been really good as a starter for 2 years now. And maybe next season, with all the focus on how the Bills will cope with the loss of White, Poyer, Hyde, maybe next season people will start to watch. Oh, they're not missing those guys. Why they are not missing those guys? Oh, this Christian Benford seems a really good cornerback, huh? So I feel like people will get surprised by Benford, and we won't, because we have seen him playing as a starter for 2 years now, and that's a real good starting cornerback in Benford. And Kyrie Elam as a depth piece, I'm totally fine, and I hope he can still have some untapped potential and still contribute. So adding cornerback 4 would be good. We are one injury away of having Elam and one of Benford or Douglas outside, and almost no depth. Jamarcus Ingram had some impressive snaps last season. Who knows? Maybe he can have a good offseason and become this guy. We know the Bills have developed a nice talent at the cornerback with Levi Wallace, with Dane Jackson, guys that got out of Buffalo to start elsewhere, and guys that nobody expected much when they came in. The Bills can draft another cornerback late and another project and work just like they did with Benford and Levi and Dane. So I'm confident this group of cornerbacks will be just fine without Tre'Davious White, as they have been actually the last couple of seasons. And then the safety spot, where I won't even mention Taron Johnson at nickel, right? But you have already your backup nickels in Ken Lewis and Mike Edwards. The guy can play some nickel corner as well, right? And to finish the evaluation here, the safety spot where most people think the Bills lost prime Micah Hyde and prime Jordan Poyer, when it can be further from the truth. So I always said that the day would come that the Bills would pay Hyde and Poyer for the plays that they already had made, not the plays that they're gonna make. And I feel like last season was this year, right? Last season was this season was when it happened, and if the Bills continue with Hyde and Poyer, they would be playing only on their names recognition right now and not on what they do on the field. Hyde had those neck injuries. It's scary, and I hope the guy really retires and don't really put himself in that situation of dealing with all those stingers when tackling. And we saw last season that he isn't afraid of tackle with even with all those problems. So I hope he retires and enjoys his life. Great career and all-time Buffalo for sure. And Jordan Poyer joined the Dolphins, and I know he wants revenge. I know his brother wasn't happy with the situation. Obviously, nobody likes to be cut, and Jordan Poyer deserves all the respect and all the admiration of Bills Mafia ever. But for me, maybe one of the best safeties, if not the best Bills safety ever, Jordan Poyer, in my opinion. But last season, Jordan Poyer wasn't prime Jordan Poyer. How long since we've seen Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde flying all over the field, making plays, making game-changing interceptions? It's been quite some time already, to be honest. And Poyer lost a step. Poyer is a liability in coverage right now. If the Dolphins plan to play him as a starting safety, they will quickly, in practice, with all that speed that they have on the offensive side of the ball, they will see that Poyer isn't a guy to play this role anymore. I feel like he maybe can. He still has some gas on the tank. If he's used as a dime linebacker, he can make some plays there. But as a safety, he's not that guy anymore. And the Bills won't really miss that. This last version of Poyer, unfortunately, it's hard to say, but Taylor Rapp isn't worse than this last version of Poyer, right? And Taylor Rapp never was a burner, right? Mike Edwards, experienced guy, never was a surefire starter, but when starting, contributed a lot to the Chiefs, to the Buccaneer championship teams. He's not worse than Jordan Poyer right now. He's not. He's not worse than even Micah Hyde right now. So when Micah Hyde and Poyer arrived in Buffalo, Hyde was a nickel cornerback from the Packers, and the Packers didn't really care about keeping him. And Poyer was a nobody, and they became all-pro players and historic players for the Bills. I'm not saying that Rapp and Edwards are gonna become the next pair of all-pros, but they really can do their job here. They can play really well here in the schemes, communicating. They should be able to play well at safety and to contribute to this defense and fly more around and make more plays with interceptions. Edwards leads the league in interceptions for touchdowns in the last couple of years. And then you still have Ken Lewis. I can't write off Ken Lewis because this guy has been impressive recently. And he can compete. He can compete. He played a lot of snaps at safety and played well. And he can compete for a spot, even a starting spot. So the Bills have some people here that they'll be able to play well enough, not at the level that Hyde and Poyer played when they were on their primes, but better than the level that they showcased last season, in my opinion. And you still can add via draft here. Safety is another position that good guys should fall down to the second round, and maybe the Bills can add a Cameron Kinchens or Tyler Nubbin kind of guy, or Bullock, who I love as well as a center field kind of safety. And I feel like all those guys can fly around. Ken Lewis was impressive flying around last offseason, last preseason especially, and he's small but he hits hard. So I really believe the Bills can survive fine having to live without Poyer and Hyde. So time will tell, but I can't buy this national media conversation that the Bills got worse, the Bills defense is done, and that Josh Allen will need to carry even a bigger burden. I don't see it, and time will tell. So that's my roster evaluation so far, my lineup evaluation so far. Bills Mafia, let me know if you agree or disagree in the comment section on YouTube. It will be a pleasure to interact with you. And I can't really tell you that the Bills got worse this offseason. Watching the Bills every game, re-watching it, and watching all those players that went away now and that left, and the guys that came in now, I can tell you that this roster got worse than last season. I feel like Brandon Beane did a really nice job setting the floor, and now he can attack the draft, go in best player available. He can focus on the best players and bring impact players. The Bills need impact players. Brandon Beane has been really good drafting recently. Good players, good overall players, but Kincaid seems like a guy that can be an impact player. Torrance in the offensive line as well. Bernard 1 year before, and Bainford, right? So now it's time to, if he drafts wide receiver, this guy gotta have potential to be an impact player by playoff time. If he goes defensive tackle, this guy gotta have potential to be an impact player, right? Edge, same thing. Even offensive line, safety, impact players. The Bills gotta find them in the draft because they already brought in real solid, good, professional NFL players there to set the floor. So time will tell. And I want to send a shout out to Dakota J, who's showing up here. Big time Jets fan, and the Jets fans are happy with all the moves that they've done in the offseason. And I won't poke fun at you, Dakota J, because man, happy for you to be able to be happy with all the movements and to have some hope in your team, because we've been there, man. You know, Bills Mafia have been there, and in every offseason that we made some moves, and it's good, man. It's good to have your hopes, high hopes. I feel like it's a little bit unfortunate for you that Aaron Rodgers is in that situation, you know, with it was sad for you with the injury last season, and now all the crazy stuff regarding Aaron Rodgers, right? But you have a chance, man. You have a chance. It's difficult off season, and teams on the paper are one thing, we know, and when they are together on the field playing, it's another conversation. But I feel like the Jets always put up a really good defense, a defense that has brought some problems for Josh Allen. It's important in the division. And on the offense, it's all about Aaron Rodgers being able to be himself. And I don't know, he's older and he hasn't been so good anymore. Time will tell. I like your addition of my guy, Tyrod Taylor. And he would be a perfect guy also to come in and guide that team with that defense. But Tyrod also hasn't been able to stay healthy for long stretches anymore. So time will tell. But it's help was on your way, right? With all those additions, and the Jets obviously are trying to get better. Not sure how good they are, really, but time will tell, right? Time will tell. So, Bills Mafia, thank you so much for joining us and watching this Leading the Charge. This episode will be live on Spotify and Apple Podcasts shortly after I finish the live here on YouTube. Subscribe to Buffalo Rumblings channel. Hit that like button and support us, please. I'll be back on Sunday with the Portuguese version of Leading the Charge for Brazil, Latin America, and Portuguese-speaking countries. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next week. Go Bills!